I on? Hello? Okay. Start this week's Torah portion is entitled Bold. Just want to see if, does this have a laser pointer on it? Oh, yeah, there. Okay. Or enter, come. Because it depicts the events where God's people, the Israelites, came out of Egypt. Even though the Torah portion this week doesn't start until the 8th plague, I wanted to take a look at the plagues in general. While looking around for information, I came across a site called knowingthebible.net, and one of its pages, Yahweh versus the gods of Egypt. I can't vouch for the whole site, but this page seemed pretty good, and I'll be quoting from it quite a bit during this commentary. One question it asked was, why did Yahweh not just quickly overcome Pharaoh and lead the people out? This would have been incredibly simple for him. Why is it that he brought the 10 plagues in order to bring the end result of the Exodus? The author answers, Yahweh brought the 10 plagues in order to demonstrate his total sovereignty over all the gods of the most powerful nation in the world. This is seen most clearly at the final plague, where Yahweh says, Exodus 12:12, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt on that night, and will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am Yahweh." Can you turn down the monitors a little, please? Or I don't know. Thanks. As the author points out, this is also noted in Numbers 33:4. "For the Egyptians were burying all their firstborn, whom Yahweh had killed among them. Also on their gods Yahweh had executed judgments." And here's some more verses where God gives reasons for using plagues. Exodus 9:16, he said, "But indeed for this purpose I have raised you up," talking to Pharaoh, "that I may show my power in you, and that my name may be declared in all the earth." Exodus 10:1, "Now Yahweh said to Moses, Go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart, and the hearts of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine before him, and that you may tell in the hearing of your son and your son's son the mighty things I have done in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that you may know that I am Yahweh." So God was showing his power so that it could be relayed throughout the generations, even to us today. So we know that he is the one and only almighty true God. Here's a quick chart I found that details the plagues and which Egyptian gods were targeted by each. We see here the Egyptians had many gods. One site I read stated they had over 2,000. In describing the accumulation of these gods, it states, "This great diversity is due to the fact that before the country was united, the northern Nile Valley was split up into about 40 self-ruling areas, later to be provinces called nomes, where the ruling tribes had their own deities and leaders." And knowingthebible.net states, "Almost all living creatures, as well as many inanimate objects, were considered the embodiment of a god." It's kind of like what we're seeing today, except even more gods back then, where people are trying to get many religions to coexist in harmony. But contrary religions can't all be correct. So then the question is, how do we know which one is the right one? That's what God set out to answer with these plagues, by showing he had authority and dominance over everything the Egyptians attributed to other gods. Let's take a more detailed look at each one. Plague 1, the sacred Nile River turned to blood in Exodus 7:20. "And Moses and Aaron did so, just as Yahweh commanded. So he lifted up the rod and struck the waters that were in the river, in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants. All the waters that were in the river were turned to blood." knowingthebible.net notes, "Many of Egypt's gods were also associated either directly or indirectly with the Nile and its productivity. The great Khnum was considered the guardian of the Nile sources, as well as the creator of people. One of the greatest gods revered was Osiris, who is the god of the underworld. The Egyptians believed that the river Nile was his bloodstream." If I pronounce any of these Egyptian gods' names wrong, I'll be glad. So, Plague 2, frogs in the land, Exodus 8:6. "So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt." Not only would the plague be seen as the gods being against them, but the people were forced to kill the embodiment of the god Hecht, simply because of the sheer number of frogs that would have been underfoot. Plague 3, dust and gnats. Exodus 8:17. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and struck the dust of the earth, and it became lice on man and beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. It is not clear against what specific deities this plague was directed, but it may have been directed towards Geb, the great god of the earth. Egyptians gave offerings to Geb for the bounty of the soil, yet it was from the dust of the soil that this plague originated. Plague 4, flies in the royal palace, Exodus 8:24. And Yahweh did so. Thick swarms of flies came into the house of Pharaoh, into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted because of the swarms of flies. The Egyptians saw this as the manifestation of the god Uachit. Many other insects may have been revered in the same way. Plague 5, death of domestic animals, Exodus 9:6. So Yahweh did this thing on the next day, and all the livestock of Egypt died. But of the livestock of the children of Israel, not one died. A large number of bulls and cows were considered sacred, and many areas in Egypt chose them as their emblems. A temple was discovered in Memphis that contained the Apis bull, which was considered the sacred animal of the god Ptah. Plague 6, ashes, dust, and boils, Exodus 9:10. Then they took ashes from the furnace and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses scattered them toward heaven. And they caused boils that break out in sores on man and beast. Serapis was the god of healing, and Imhotep was the god of medicine and the guardian of the healing sciences. So we see Yahweh's already taken care of plenty of gods. Plague 7, hail and fire, Exodus 9:23. Moses stretched out his rod toward heaven, and Yahweh sent thunder and hail, and fire darted to the ground. And Yahweh rained hail on the land of Egypt. Since this plague originated from the sky, it would have been an attack against Nut, the sky goddess. Other gods were Shu, the wind god, and Horus, the hawk-headed sky god of Upper Egypt. The plague would have also been directed towards those gods who protected the crops, such as Isis and Seth. Plague 8, locusts from the east, Exodus 10:13. So Moses stretched out his rod over the land of Egypt, and Yahweh brought an east wind on the land all that day and all that night. When it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts. There were many gods associated with the crops of Egypt, for the crops in the Nile were the source for all life in the country. There was Nepri, the god of grain, Ermutet, the goddess of childbirth and crops, Thermuthis, the goddess of fertility and the harvest, and Seth, another god of crops. Plague 9, darkness in the land, Exodus 10:22. So Moses stretched out his hand toward heaven, and there was thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. The sun god Ra was considered to be a great blessing to the land for his faithfulness in providing the warmth and light of the sun each day without fail. The plague would also have been a direct attack against Pharaoh, for he was the divine representation of the sun god Ra. It makes you wonder about how God's going to attack or the gods of the U.S. Plague 10, death of the firstborn, Exodus 12:29. And it came to pass at midnight that Yahweh struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of livestock. This would have been humiliating to Isis, the winged goddess of fertility, Meshchenet, the goddess who presided at the birth of children, to Hathor, one of the 7 deities who attended the birth of children, to Min, and to some other gods. Okay. So that's a look at all the plagues. In closing, I'd like to share some thoughts I had while preparing this commentary. We earlier read how the Egyptians would make gods of animals and inanimate objects, and how Pharaoh was supposed to be the earthly representation of the sun god. Given these ideas, it would make sense that the Egyptians would consider the sun god their highest deity. After all, the sun is the largest and most majestic object we can see, bright and high up in the sky. But today, we can see a bigger picture thanks to the advancements in science. So here in box number 1, we have Mercury, Mars, Venus, and our Earth. Oh, sorry, I think I put it on timer. Yep. Now, each of these boxes is a different scale. Box 2, here is Earth now, shrunken down, so we can see how small it is compared to Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter. Then they shrink down. Jupiter here, here's a star called Wolf 359. Here's our sun, and here's Sirius. So like our Earth is like not even visible on here. Then you take this Sirius here, and you see even bigger stars, and so on and so forth. This one down here, and then this one down here. Our sun is actually quite puny, and our God created all of these. Psalm 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. This is the danger of deciding to not believe in something you can't see. The Egyptians couldn't see those larger stars and so worshiped the one that looked largest to them. In the same way, people today will worship things that they can see give them immediate return. You know how there are things so small they can't be seen with the naked eye? Here we see that there are things so big that they can't be seen with the naked eye. And our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Yeshua, is the biggest of all. Shabbat Shalom.